Most of us have only brief encounters with the streams in our area as we pass over them on bridges. But down here you can savor the real beauty of our waterways. You can also see the havoc wreaked upon them by people. This 5-part series you're about to begin watching endeavors to show the consequences of our actions as we learn about some simple lifestyle changes that can make a big difference. In part 1, we deal with non-point source pollution. Now, that's a fancy name for anything that ends up in the water that can't be traced to its exact point of origin. Things like litter. A better name for it might be pointless pollution. There are 3,000 miles of waterways in the Houston area. All of them drain into Galveston Bay and then the Gulf of Mexico. But these streams bring more than just water to Galveston. The proof can be seen even in areas accessible only by boat or helicopter.
All this trash we see here, this island's not inhabited, so it's not coming from people here. Where is it coming from?
It's coming from upstream or in through the bayous, the creeks, the drainage ways, everything that empties into the bay.
It begins with litter thrown out of car windows or blown from unsealed trash cans. It collects in natural ditch lines and man-made drainage systems, waiting for the next rain. Some of it sinks to the bottom. The rest floats to places like this shoreline along the Houston Ship Channel.
Outstanding.
Here, the Bayou Posse is using probationers to clean up the mess. The trash is sorted for recycling to defray the cost of garbage bags and other supplies.
2.5 tons of glass, close to 500 pounds of plastics have been recycled, and 300 tires, just out of this one small area.
So how much of this stuff can be recycled?
Probably about 70%.
Randy Hall would rather see this manpower used for erosion control and the restoration of wildlife habitat. But as it stands, they can't even keep up with the litter. Each new rain brings more trash. It also brings oil. Used oil dumped directly into storm drains, as illustrated in this simulation. By the way, that's molasses. But you also contribute to the problem if your car leaks fluid. These hydrocarbons are also washed by rain into our waterways. And the amount that ends up in Galveston Bay may surprise you.
Every year in the Houston metro area, off of our streets, we have enough oil and gas to equal 40% of the Exxon Valdez spill washing into the bay system.
You also contribute to pollution if you over-fertilize and then overwater your lawn. Some nutrients in the water system can be beneficial. Too much can kill.
You may as well come down here and put the fertilizer directly on the water and sprinkle it. There is no difference between that and having it wash down your storm sewer. Fertilizers fertilize the lawn, and when they wash off, they also fertilize plants in our waterways. Sometimes there could be overgrowth. We can have algae blooms. When they die, they go to the bottom. Bacteria decomposers start acting on this plant material, and because bacteria are alive, like every other living thing, they consume oxygen. And so the amount of oxygen in the water system declines. And when it gets below certain kinds of thresholds, well, you're going to have a fish kill.
The #1 polluter in Harris County is its citizens. We all contribute to the problem, and together we can solve it. But we won't truly succeed until the shores of our waterways are as beautiful close up as they are from outer space.
And there you guys are.
What we put down our drains can have a major impact on our streams. It can also increase our sewer bills. Think, for instance, about all the clean water we force sewage treatment plants to treat needlessly when we leave the faucet running. In part 2 of this series, you will learn that you can improve water quality by simply watching your waistline. The way you clean up after cooking, wash your clothes, and even shower can contribute to the release of raw sewage into our streams. If you could take a trip down your drain, you'd see why. Remember all that hamburger and bacon grease you poured down the kitchen drain? There it is, that white stuff sticking to the top of the pipe, and it will only get worse. There's some more up ahead, about to cause a blockage that could cause sewage to back up into your home or through a manhole where it will run off into the nearest stream. Grease also increases the maintenance cost of your local sewage treatment plant. Cleaning out clogged pipes and repairing broken pumps isn't cheap. And guess who ends up paying for it? The same person who ends up paying for the removal of grease from the treatment system. It ends up in a landfill, and you could accomplish the same thing for a whole lot less money than using a vacuum truck. All you have to do is pour it in a can and put it out with the garbage. This simple lifestyle change will save your utility district a lot of money, whether the plant is large or small. The #1 maintenance problem is grease.
The grease will harden and form blockages inside of the main line, and the end result is a sewer stoppage. We just have a situation right here as we speak. Looking down into that 12-inch line, we've got a huge grease blockage that is partially blocking the flow. The grease will gather more grease particles, and that blockage will get bigger and bigger, and before you know it, there will be no flow whatsoever going through the line.
Of course, the maintenance bill is paid by the customers and the taxpayers, but then many of them caused the problem in the first place. And there are even more costs to come. We haven't even talked about what it does to your pipes.
We have a good example here of a pipe that we recently replaced, and if you'll notice, this gunk is grease that came out of the sink line. People have a tendency to want to use a hard caustic chemical to get rid of this problem, and when the caustic starts coming down, it starts clearing out the bottom, and when it does, it eats away the pipe also. Wilburn says the best way to clean out the grease is to use a biological drain treatment. These use enzymes and special bacteria cultures that eat the grease and not your pipes. Another problem for treatment plants, especially small ones, is volume. On rainy days, rainwater infiltrates through breaks in sewer pipes and through residential cleanouts that don't have lids.
Thank you.
Add to that a lot of people stuck indoors who all decide to wash dishes, or laundry, or shower at the same time, and a small plant can easily be overwhelmed. This can be the result. This is an aerial picture of an overloaded plant releasing raw sewage into a stream. To help prevent this, you can avoid doing laundry and dishes during heavy rains. It's also a good idea to only use water when you need it. Don't leave the kitchen tap running continuously. And while you're waiting for the shower water to warm up, collect that water and use it on your household plants. Better to use it on these plants than to run it through a plant like this. In the long run, it will save you money, while at the same time, saving our streams. There's a perception among some people that the biggest polluters of our waterways are our industries. Fact is, industry has done much to save our streams. The biggest polluters now are people, citizens of our area who litter and in some cases intentionally dump trash and oil and chemicals into our streams. In part 3 of this series, we'll meet a law enforcement team whose job is taking out the trash. A work crew cleans up trash along a 100-yard stretch of the Houston Ship Channel. There are many sites like this along Houston area waterways, and what's not picked up can be carried to Galveston Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. This work crew is part of the Bayou Posse program, which utilizes the free labor of probationers.
And there are people who are given probation, given another opportunity, and they'll get anywhere from 80 hours to 360 hours of community service. Last year, we performed over $12 million in free services.
Work on this site is not yet complete, but just look at what they've picked up so far.
This is our recyclable plastic, mostly soda pop bottles. And here's a real problem. These are 1-quart oil cans, and they're not recyclable and produce a lot of problems in the waterways. And of course, this is styrofoam. Over here you see the big stack of wood. That'll be ground up, and then it will become topsoil again and will go back into the system. The tires will be recycled, and of course they could have been recycled from the start. Just about everything that we pick up will end up being recycled, and it will become an asset instead of a eyesore.
The probationers are suddenly very big on the idea of recycling and, at the very least, proper disposal of trash. They've had quite an education on trash, including where it originates. Much of it is street litter, items thrown out of car windows, which are then carried by winds and rainwater runoff to storm drains, which empty into Houston's bayous. Some of the trash is dumped directly onto the banks of Houston waterways by illegal dumpers.
We've got a report of automobile parts being dumped into Green's Bayou.
Houston police officer Steve Dicker is hot on their trails. He's part of an 8-person unit at Houston's Neighborhood Protection Team.
Probably about 75% of the time we can locate a dumper either through an eyewitness or through trace evidence. We set up stings in certain areas of town when we have a proficient amount of constant dumping, and we do usually prosecute multiple cases.
These surveillance pictures were taken at a Houston hotspot for oil dumping. This dead-end street became a magnet for people working on their cars, and in most cases, the old oil was dumped onto the banks of a stream. This, even though the state, along with auto parts stores, has set up a network of sites where old oil can be dropped off for recycling. Look at any Houston stream following a rain, and chances are you will see a sheen of oil on the surface. That, along with the trash, is certainly unsightly, but it can also be fatal to wildlife. Whether it's a bird choked by a plastic 6-pack ring, or animals dying from starvation because their stomachs are full of undigestible bits of plastic. For those who litter, it is perhaps a matter of convenience. But to the wildlife, there is nothing convenient about trash in the waterways. Did you know that you can contribute to a fish kill by fertilizing your lawn? You can if you use too much, followed by a heavy rain or the overwatering of your lawn. Now, fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides can be used safely, but only if you follow the directions. There is another alternative, as you're about to see, and that's to garden nature's way. This is a suburban backyard which is in harmony with nature. It's an organic garden.
I was a failure at mowing early on. You mow your front yard because you want the neighborhood to look good. Your backyard, you mow as little as possible in order to maintain the wildscape.
The main reason he gardens this way is that it is good for the environment. He does not use fertilizers, pesticides, or other chemicals because they wash off during rains and watering and end up in area waterways, where they can and do cause fish kills. But there are other reasons to garden this way. In Terry's case, his garden produces about 1/3 of his food year-round, so it also saves him money.
You know, you go to the grocery store and you buy a lettuce and you put it in there, and about half of it gets wasted. You know, no matter what rate it is, you buy too much or you buy too little. Well, here, I just go pick it when I want to eat it. So, I mean, I have like 0 waste, so the cost is just incredibly low. I just pick it whenever I want to eat it. Del Jardín de Hoy. The food of today from the garden.
So what are we having here?
Your big leaf on the bottom is collards. This is parsley, and these are the garlic onions, and this is the flowering bok choy, and this is broccoli. Potatoes came from Idaho. I don't eat bread, I eat the greens from the garden. I roll the food just like tacos, so it's really kind of a taco salad, if you want.
People in Houston ought to find this very natural.
That's right.
O'Rourke says healthier eating has also resulted in lower blood pressure and lower cholesterol. He says there are other health benefits as well.
I have found, like lots of people, I've suffered from allergies, that eating the plants that are living in your own backyard somehow have some factor of reducing your allergy. I don't have allergies like I used to.
Leftovers from our lunch go into the compost pile, along with coffee grounds, leaves, and grass clippings. He uses the compost as a natural fertilizer for his garden.
Composting is so easy, and it's the only difficult part of it is that people somehow are put off by it, thinking that it's difficult.
He also saves rainwater to use on his garden, and since he uses mainly native plants used to Houston's weather, he doesn't have to water as often. Insect problems like fire ants and aphids are handled with home remedies, and he also maintains 2 ponds for insect control.
The mosquitoes lay their eggs in this water, and the goldfish that you see and the gambusia, the mosquito-eating minnows, eat it just like caviar, so you just don't get mosquitoes out of a pond like this with fish in it. I will have thousands, literally thousands of toads that will come out and go to all of the yards around here. In my garden, it's the toads and the birds eat more insects than any kind of herbicide or pesticide that I would use.
There is one more benefit to natural gardening. Once the system is set up, O'Rourke says it takes less time to maintain, just a few minutes a day. Many of us are drawn to water. Some are fortunate enough to live on the banks or shores of beautiful waterways. We all love a great view. But in some cases, the steps people take to get a better view ends up destroying it. Most erosion and destruction of habitat is caused by people. In the 5th and final part of this series, we will visit Paradise Lost.
The only way to see the bayous is really to canoe down them.
It's also the only way to see the erosion of banks caused over the years by pollution, severe weather, and by human beings.
Most of the major erosion problems have been caused by the landowners themselves trying to manicure the bayou too much to have a view for themselves.
Once native plants are removed, the banks are vulnerable to the force of the water, so the quest for a better view ends up destroying it.
It's already failed once, as you can see in the middle, and that's what they've done for repair work. You would think that they'd learned their lesson by now. This on your right is interlocking concrete. This hasn't worked very well either. Well, it was another unorthodox erosion control approach that's failed. Pretty ugly, huh?
Experts say the best way to fight nature is with nature, by putting back what was there before.
I really think that the bioengineering method is the best. They put a limestone toe at the bottom and then cover it with soil and plant thousands of willow trees. And the willow trees grow so fast and the roots go in that it holds the banks together really fairly quickly.
Those are willows that are coming out. But that's bioengineering, and it will get stronger than that concrete thing you saw over there, which was built, and that's 30 years old and it's about to fall over.
Terry Hershey practices what she preaches. She's a longtime advocate of biopreservation. She uses native plants to protect the banks of the bayou, which passes by her property. Of course, it's more than just erosion control. It's restoring lost habitat where birds and animals eat, live, and reproduce. In 30 years, Terry Hershey has created a nature sanctuary out of what used to be 3 acres of finely manicured lawn.
What did you do to change it from manicured to this?
I left it alone.
Hershey also uses what nature throws away, such as leaves, for compost that will provide nutrients for her garden. Most people don't do that, and as a result, lawn clippings, leaves, and tree limbs waste a lot of landfill space.
1/3 of all of everything that we pick up on the heavy trash program are large tree limbs and branches and wood. So rather than landfilling that, we thought, well, why not recycle it?
The city of Houston now has contracts with several companies which produce compost. It saves landfill space and it saves the city money. This wood was removed from the shores of the Houston Ship Channel. The Houston area has 3,000 miles of waterways that all empty into the Galveston Bay system.
Put the plants in about 1.5 feet apart.
Here on Morgan's Point, past oil spills and pollution have killed off native plants that used to keep the beaches in place. Students with AmeriCorps are now restoring habitat as they do community service in exchange for help with college tuition.
And in about 6 months, they will be thick and they will establish a good, healthy root system, and they'll look like the plants in the foreground up here.
At high tide, Young Marine Life uses the area as a nursery to feed and grow up. And when the tide recedes, the plants trap sediments and sand. The beach literally rebuilds itself. And since less sediment returns to the bay, water quality also improves.